So I've had so many dismissive avoidant attachment styles in my practice and within different workshops or the personal development school over the past 10 or 12 years. And I can tell you there are five major red flags dismissive avoidants tend to be on the lookout for when it comes to dating and romantic relationships. So in this video, we're going to cover the top five red flags, what those are, and we'll talk a little bit about what you can do with this information at the end. So first and foremost, dismissive avoidance, obviously look out for the red flag of moving too fast too soon. Now, this is a fairly red flag for anybody objectively, because if somebody's trying to move way too fast, way too soon, then there could be some codependent characteristics or behaviors there. There could be a fear of being alone. It could be a rebound situation. And too fast too soon, I mean, like you've been on 2 or 3 dates and you're ready to settle down and make a commitment to a relationship. But, too fast, too soon also has to be something that's recognized as being relative, because to a dismissive avoidant, too fast, too soon could be 3 months, whereas to a securely attached person, 3 months towards making a commitment could be something that seems very reasonable. So when we see a dismissive avoidant starting to date people, there's too much talk too early about a commitment, about the future, about too far into the future of plans, about too many expectations for the future. Dismissive avoidance will definitely see this as a really big red flag, because it's not just the typical too fast, too soon. It's that even around the 2 month mark, being really ready to settle down and make a commitment can be something that could trigger the dismissive avoidant attachment style. Whereas generally, we're looking somewhere within the 2.5 month to 4 month, 4.5 month range for two securely attached people to decide to settle down and commit. And again, that's not like a one size fits all rule. It's the general pattern that I would see among securely attached individuals. Number two, being too dramatic or too emotional. Now it's interesting because DAs, as a general rule, we know one of the major features that creates attraction between two people is trait variety, right? And this is biological. If years and years and years and years ago, I'm in the wild trying to survive, and let's say I'm very strong, and let's say I pair up with somebody really smart, then we're more likely to survive together. It's trait variety, right? We're wired to be attracted to people with different traits being expressed than we do, because we have a greater chance at survival and evolution that way. But what's super interesting is that when we look at this idea of too dramatic or too emotional, on one level, dismissive avoidance, because they're so repressed emotionally, they actually tend to be drawn to very expressive people who are more likely to be correlated with being more emotional types of individuals, right? Because I have to feel a lot to be able to be very expressive with how I'm feeling. However, if somebody is not just expressive emotionally, but if they are dramatic, if they are causing conflict, if they're always in some kind of conflict, and if that particular dramatic personality or emotionality is oriented towards fights, arguments, conflict, lots of problems, challenges in their life with different relationships, DAs absolutely see this as a red flag, because they end up looking at this and going, oh my goodness, I'm more likely to get into conflict with this person. And we know one of the biggest fears of a dismissive avoidant is being in conflict. They actually have a subconscious core wound of being unsafe. And that's something that really shows up for them quite strongly. So it's a really important thing to pay attention to. Number three, if dismissive avoidants find that people are not accepting, if they're judging, critical, shaming, these are things that touch some of the DA's biggest core wounds. It's part of why dismissive avoidants are so afraid to be seen and to open themselves up, is because they're truly afraid to feel judged or criticized or shamed, because they have a lot of shame wounds that are the result of neglect from childhood. So they tend to be on the lookout for this. And if they feel that people are too harsh, too rigid, too critical, this will actually be one of the biggest things that causes dismissive avoidance to want to run away really early on. And they won't share that with you. That's not going to be something where they're conversating about that or letting that be known, but it's definitely a deep inner fear. Now, so much what I'm talking about so far has to do with the core wounds of the dismissive avoidant. And it's really important to recognize every single insecure attachment style has a whole bunch of major core wounds. These core wounds are the result of things that we gather from past experiences. So if you have a lot of being betrayed in your past, you're likely to have an I will be betrayed core wound. If you have been made to feel not good enough or unworthy or unlovable, those could be core wounds that you're carrying. And it may not be because somebody didn't actually love you, but we can actually have a core wound, for example, acquired from not being shown love in our love languages or the way that we needed growing up as a child. And because we couldn't understand that our parent loved differently than we love, then we may make that mean, oh, I must not be lovable, right? So the mind interprets trauma and then stores those experiences as different core wounds or imprints at the subconscious level of mind. And this is really a big part of what the baggage is that we carry into our future relationships. But we can release this baggage by really getting clear about what the root level of those core wounds are and how to recondition or reprogram them. And to go a step further, I actually have a course you can check out for free for 14 days, just for the month of May, just for Mental Health Month, all about subconscious core wounds and how to actually recondition them, how to remove them from your subconscious once and for all. And so you can check that out. In the description box below, and also down there, it will give you access to the whole personal development school, all the different courses. You can definitely get through quite a few courses, probably 2, maybe even 3 within 14 days. And you can join me on webinars. We've got daily webinars, events, social events, community events, all kinds of stuff in there if you want to check it out. Now, if we go back to number 4, another big red flag for dismissive avoidance is saying I love you too soon. So this idea that if somebody, makes these huge they sort of proclaim their love to somebody very early on in the relationship, dismissive avoidance, because they take so much longer as a general rule to really get feelings. Dismissive avoidance can infatuate with people somewhat, and they can kind of put them a little bit on a pedestal, but from a distance. They can infatuate more with like television characters, movie stars, things like that. But what's so interesting is that like really developing true feelings for a dismissive avoidant is more of a process because they really have to let their guard down and kind of get past their internal walls. Whereas fearful avoidance and anxious preoccupied, they tend to feel more open to developing feelings more quickly. So because of that, remember, we all project from our perception. We tend to, at a subconscious level, assume everybody is as we are. And so, because of that, dismissive avoidance can feel alarmed if somebody's proclaiming their love too early and they cannot trust it. They can feel like, does this person even really know me? How do I know that they really love me? They may think that they love me. They must just love the idea of me. And they can really second guess and doubt that if deep feelings like that are expressed very early on, like 2 months in, 3 months in, things of that nature. So that can be another big red flag for dismissive avoidance that I've seen come up many times over the years. And then number 5, too much pressure. And really pressure around things like the other attachment styles may have as expectations from the DA. Um, Things like, pressure to text too much, pressure to make a commitment too early, pressure on, making plans and being, super, super organized in advance for all the different plans, because DAs tend to like to commit to things based on how they're feeling at the time. Definitely a fairly common DA characteristic. So if there's too much pressure or expectation around things like frequency of texting, calling, seeing each other, like a lot of push around it, not like a healthy communication of a need and finding a compromise, but like this background pressure, that will definitely be a red flag for a dismissive avoidant as well, that can cause them to really shut down and run in the other direction. So these are 5 important things to pay attention to. Now, these are not things that you should change yourself for, right? These are things that you should recognize if you have these patterns within yourself. Instead of doing these things, like let's say you naturally move too fast too soon, right? Let's say you're an AP, you hear this and you're like, I'm ready to settle down after the second date. It doesn't mean that like you should change all of these different things to please the dismissive avoidant. It means that you have to find a healthy compromise by expressing your needs and finding healthy ways to get your needs met that takes both parties into consideration. So maybe you're an early mover when it comes to commitment. And it doesn't mean like just repress your commitment needs and just go with only what the DA wants, but it does mean, maybe ask for other things in that gap, right? So if you want to commit at 2 weeks and somebody wants to commit at 5 months, maybe you say, you know what, I maybe a couple months in, you say, hey, let's have a conversation to make sure that we're on the same page. We don't have to make a commitment right now, but I need to know that we're both moving in the same direction. We're both interested in each other and can see this going somewhere, right? So you can open those conversations, look for pieces of certainty, and you can find other ways to get certainty met, like asking for reassurance in general, communicating about feelings more openly. being consistent with plans, right? You can do those different things. And then you don't want to just say, okay, and that's all I'm going to do until that person's ready to commit. But you may have the conversation with that person too and say, look, I know you may take longer to commit. For me, commitment's more important earlier on. And so it doesn't have to be immediate, but I would want to see a commitment around 3.5, 4 months to see that we're moving in the same direction. So you can adjust that person's timeline, make it more of a compromise between those things, and sprinkle in how to meet your needs in other ways by addressing them and expressing them healthily. And if you're really accompanying those things together, you can look out for the red flags, be mindful of what the DA's red flags are, but also make room for yourself to take up space and your needs to be seen. So I hope that makes sense. And I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe to this channel if you were enjoying it. And I can't wait to see you in future videos.